A man remarked, "I thought by this time in my life I would have fewer temptations, but actually I have more." A woman said, "I thought that after raising all of the children, I'd have more patience, but I actually have less." A teenager said, "It used to be so easy to keep God's commandments, but now it's getting harder and harder to keep them." If any of those remarks sound like something that you might say, we're featured today with God's direction in the gospel. There's a story that illustrates that gospel, a very simple one, about a boy that wanted to be a sailor. And so he was under the watchful care of a veteran sailor. They were out in a boat, and the wind kicked up, and the sea got a little choppy. And the elder sailor said, "Young man, I want you to climb all the way to the top of that mast." And so he began. And he did well to the halfway point. Then he looked down, and he saw the turbulent sea. And he got dizzy, and he got queasy. And the veteran sailor beneath the mast yelled up, "Keep looking at the sky, boy. Keep looking at the sky." And he did, and he got to the top, and he came down safely. That's like today's gospel. Most of us are traveling on seas that are pretty turbulent most of the time. To have a day with absolutely clear sailing in life may not be a regular practice. We do just fine, though, if we keep our eyes on Jesus. We get into trouble when we look away from him, when we become self-absorbed, when we look at our surroundings and feel desperate or lonely. It's when we keep our eyes on Christ that we can do just fine with the choppy seas of life. And we find that in today's gospel, where Jesus walks on the water, and the waters were stormy. The disciples are in the boat. They're afraid. And then they see Jesus walking on the water. And what does he say to them? "Courage. Don't be afraid. It's I." Peter still doesn't believe him. "If it is you, Lord, have me climb out of this boat and walk on the water too." And Jesus very calmly says, "Come." And Peter gets out of the boat, and he's walking on water. Then Peter takes his vision off Christ, and he looks at the sea beneath his feet, and he feels the wind, and he begins to sink. "Save me, Lord," he cries out. And Jesus, walking on the water, comes over and stretches out his hand and takes Peter's hand and pulls him out. And together they go over to the boat and get in. And the storm is calmed. The seas are smooth. And the disciples say to Jesus, "Truly, you are the Son of God." We find ourselves there on the choppy seas of life. We do just fine if we keep our eyes connected with Jesus. But when do we get in trouble? When we look everywhere but at him. But what does he do for us? He's with us all the time. He says to us, like he said to the apostles, take courage. Don't be afraid. It's I. As we're walking along, we sometimes drop our glance and look at the seas in our surroundings and start to sink. And we cry out like St. Peter, Lord, save me. And does he? Yes. He extends his hand and pulls us to safety, even in the midst of the storm. That's where we are. If we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we can make it through. I'll finish this morning with a prayer. Lord, in the first reading, we heard about Elijah the prophet finding you in the whisper of the gentle wind. St. Paul found you in the bright flash and getting knocked off his horse and invited to conversion. St. Peter found you in today's gospel in the midst of the stormy sea. Lord, we ask you, help us to always know that you are with us. Help us to hear your words. Take courage. Don't be afraid. It's I. And precious Lord, take our hands and lead us home, for we truly believe that you are the Son of God.